Violence is an American pastime. We have violence for fun and profit in sports, in print, the movies, on television. What you are about to see in this section of the program is extremely strong material. We must show it to you if the problem is to be clearly stated. Now, Americans are by no means pioneers in the field of violence as entertainment. In the Colosseum in Rome, 2,000 years ago, Christians were thrown to the lions for the pleasure of those watching. And the Romans no doubt picked up that idea somewhere else. We're not that barbarous. We don't stage fights to the death. But consider what we do put on and look at and read. Carl Stokes begins with sports.
Sports provide us with most of the authentic violence we watch. Not the simulated violence of movies or television drama, but the real thing.
The president just ordered the Navy to hit the borders of Haiti, slaughter babies from the waters of Euphrates. Maybe they sent germs that polluted our sperms and made us live uncircumcised in the serpent eyes and told us certain lies. And these days your servant dies, but in the halls of Pharaoh the walls are narrow, and religion is like a prison for the seekers of wisdom. This be the dance of the graveyard, so do the spank with the dead zombie. Here comes the tanks of a red army. The real Jew is you. Jeremiah 14:2. The Lord tried the Hebrews. You're hovered by the eagle. America is evil. Let no man deceive you, beat you, or mistreat you. The tribe of Edom stole your freedom, and Edom means redneck. I'm throwing bullets in my tech. Nah, I'm going out like Joshua with a pen, an army, and a pot to the wicked ways. The devil plays mad tricks on your mind. If you're blind to the wicked ways, the devil plays mad tricks on your mind. I remember the 6 doctors that wanted to take my brain into a laboratory, destroy me since birth. My baby talk was psychic thoughts, flashbacks, all the past blacks trapped in the present, killing for dead presidents. Where every ghetto residence is evidence, and the future will never be none if we don't become unity. Forget them devil-made guns and leave them demons bleeding. Give them back with tons of speed and bullets. Fuck your technology, it's technology. Telling lies to my vision, I was given enough time to master the criminology. And Mr. Pastor teaching demonology. Words of don't knowledge, I demolish evil made with an easy win. When my thoughts are spaced out, come down to earth. The devil crawls cause he's lonely, jealous, and a victim of the unholy ghost. You're blind to the wicked ways. The devil plays mad tricks on your mind. If you're blind to the wicked ways, the devil plays mad tricks on your mind. He listens to the cries in the distance of the next victim, wishing that he had some assistance. And right before his eyes he'll appear. Beware when the shadow caster, demon masters in the near. He blocked the true light from your sight and transform your brightest days into your darkest nights. I had your blind man praising the great, cause he feel a corpse that lays in the dirt and think he's in the church, not even aware that death is near. And he's one step from his grave, a naive mental slave. If he had his third eye spark, he might have been scoping the demons that be lurking in the dark. Always keep your glowing eye open, but know who your enemies be. I can see you, but you can't see me. Escape from your chains like Great Houdini, then disappear like a majestic genie in mid-air. Vanish, that's my advantage. And then I transform to a hurricane storm and rain holy water for 7 days and 7 nights. The chosen one sparked the light of the sun that's killing off villains by the ton, sealing all the doors through the hells to break the spells that were cast on my peeps that were weak. Made to keep my peeps in a deep sea.
Behold the angels out to heaven, who professes a whole new rap session, repossessing the gossip. Back so black, better hand over your act or trap. 753 who have received the law by the dispositions of angels and have not kept it, transgressed it. Better burn your testaments. Ain't nothing changed, niggas is getting arrested. Beat down like pestilence on account of false impression, indiscretion. Of eyes upon with the glimpse of a third eye, slick and wicked. I'm working niggas out like physics. I blast out from the heart of Brooklyn like an arrow. Destination to my point is narrow. I shoot niggas back into the time like barrels. I smoke up on your brain, leave it burnt as Sahara. That means desert, the F.A. rock storm, leaving niggas buried in Putnam Avenue's lawn. Headquarters of the zoo, what part was it review, or didn't you understand? I'm drilling niggas back under the surface of the land. The land.
Shall the righteous man stand in great motives before the face of such that have afflicted him, and made no account of his labors? When they see it, they shall be troubled with terrible fear, and shall be amazed at the strength of his salvation.
It's often bloodthirsty. People punching people. Kicking each other. Cars crashing into cars. Blood spilling and flesh splitting, all for our entertainment. And sometimes, when the traditional sports don't provide enough emotional kicks, we invent new ones, or give the old ones a new, brutal twist.
We're talking about rational emotive psychotherapy.
Dr. John McCarthy is an associate professor of psychology at Fairfield University in Connecticut, and an expert on the subject of aggressive behavior. He feels controlled aggression can be productive, and he teaches that concept in his capacity as the university's hockey coach.
Do it again! Put it in the corner for Jimmy to do a curl! Hit him, Eddie! Take him out, Terry! Take him out! Take him out!
But aggression is just a step away from violence. McCarthy worries about the direction sports are taking.
I believe sports are becoming more violent, and I think that, again, is related to the culture as a whole. I think the culture is more permissive, and I think as the culture becomes more permissive, you see an acceleration of behaviors on the parts of people. Acts that formerly might have been considered aggressive acts now become ordinary, and I think people have become jaded. And as people become jaded, I think that they become more accustomed and accept these acts more, and probably want more aggression. If there is a person coming out for sports who has a tendency to act in a violent fashion, sports may encourage this violent behavior and legitimize it so that there is a distinct possibility of making a violent person more violent.
It has been said that the British national character was developed on the playing fields of Eton. Ours may be molded on the pee-wee football practice field.
Everybody where the 5-hole is. Is that it right there? Is that the 5-hole all the way through here, right? 5-hole. It ain't over there.
Few people would deny that sports can have a positive effect.
When are you going to wake up? What are you doing way back here? You lose something? Go hard, go hard.
You learn teamwork, develop your body, develop your character. At least that's the idea behind it all. But sports also pose a danger which concerns some people, including football star Larry Zonka.
The times I've entertained the idea of letting my son go ahead and play it, I think I became very interested in who was going to coach it.
Let's get him up. Let's go.
The idea of the man that's going to work with my son becomes a very real danger in the sense that you can put him in a situation and test him as a man before he's a man. I don't think I would ever try to get a 10-year-old boy to stand in and take the abuse that you have to on kind of a head-on, well-organized football. predominantly most of them won't want to be in a situation where they're getting the hell knocked out of them. And they won't want to be tested play in and play out. They won't want to conform to the organization that's necessary to play organized football.
Oh, come on, Butler!
And I think it's more important that they have fun at it.
You're glad to get out of here, aren't you, son? If you don't do it here, you can't do it in the ball game. They're going to step on your face.
You walk out there like that, that's just the way you block.
That's the way to drive.
I think the real danger is what happens to the child's head, not necessarily what happens to his body.
But in professional sports, the emphasis is on the physical. Sometimes the violence stops just this side of murder, and the crowds love it.
Like a lot of people like to go see a good game. I like to go see a good game rather than blood. But the good hits are good too, you know. Good hits are part of the game.
More or less let out your own tension by watching other people running through the field and sort of slamming into each other.
It releases your anxieties when you go to a football game to see violence.
Do they love it just for the violence? It's hard to say. But when our NBC News poll asked whether some of our most popular sports are now too violent, 65% responded that they are not.
Football is definitely not too violent, no. It's you can't talk about whether you're going to make it less violent or not. You're just going to talk about whether you have football or you don't have football, because the violence is part of it.
If you say a defensive lineman hitting, the offense when they're playing and knocks the guy down, if you're calling that violence, then sure, I mean, there's a certain amount of violence involved, but I don't define violence that way.
It's like saying an automobile accident is violent or a shark is violent, but, that's just the way it is. It's the nature of the sport.
There are two theories about what happens to fans when they watch violent events. One theory says that there is a cathartic effect, and that by identifying with a team, there is a decrease in the aggression that the individual feels. Another theory says that watching aggressive events produces an excitatory effect, so that the individual has an increase in feelings of tension and may have an increase in aggression.
The appetite for violence is not limited to the fans. The players seem to thrive on it too. Here again is Larry Zonka.
I think professional football players are violent men. I think they enjoy the violence on the field. There's a certain amount of excitement that goes along with it. But you have to stipulate that, when you hit another guy in the nose or you tackle him or you block him, you know he's going to get up. It's different when you know that he's going to get up and it's just a game.
Whatever the reason, sports in America are becoming more violent. And the more violent they are, the more popular they seem to be.
Pain and brutality are box office. They probably laughed when a hapless caveman slipped on a banana peel, and later when Jack fell down and broke his crown. Punch and Judy, after all, is the longest-running show in town.
Hush, baby, hush. Hush, nasty baby. Judy! Oh, the child must have a stomachache. Phew, naughty child. Keep quiet, can't you? Oh, baby, baby.
Where's the baby?
Gone to sleep.
What have you done with it?
What have I done with it?
Yes, done with it. I heard it crying.
I dropped it out the window. I thought you might be passing by.
Oh, you cruel, horrid wretch! To drop the poor child out the window! Oh, you shall pay!
Oh, Judy, don't worry. You shall have another. There's plenty more where that came from.
Oh, take that! I'll make you pay for this. Depend upon it. I'll teach you.
Softly, Judy, softly. Ow, oh.
Oh, you nasty, cruel brute. I'll teach you.
Very well. Now comes my turn to teach you. How do you like my teaching, my pretty dear? There. Now get up. Well, if you won't get up, then get down. To lose a wife is to gain a fortune.
During the early 19th century, reading matter was mass-produced for the first time. And as more Americans began going to school, the common man gradually got the reading habit. By 1860, the first dime novel appeared. This was the popular literature of America. Dime novels fed extravagant fantasies and told tales of men of virtue against adversity, against swindlers, redskins, pirates, and lowlifes, and there was no ban on bloodshed.
He, insane with liquor himself, rained a dozen blows upon the swollen back of his victim. The thin dress was cut to shreds, exposing the bare back of the helpless woman, which was now one mass of blood.
By the turn of the century, pulp magazines replaced dime novels. They were cheap, lurid, and sensational. The pulps supposedly were written for the lower classes, but they were read by everyone. For America's millions, pulp magazines became the principal entertainment. The pulps prospered for almost 50 years. They were banned by parents, condemned by educators, and damned by religious leaders. They were said to foster delinquency and degeneracy. Morbid tales of suspense and terror, vengeance and lust were illustrated with scenes of horror and sex. During the 1920s and 30s, pulp magazines were sold at the rate of 20 million copies a month. Radio and comics were the first challenges to pulp popularity. By the 1930s, people could hear stories of suspense and terror. Some of the thrillers and serials were so violent that Congress discussed ways to protect children. Eventually, the radio networks established codes eliminating torture, horror, use of the supernatural or superstitious likely to arouse fear, and banning profanity, vulgarity, kidnapping, and even cliffhanging. The comics enabled people to see pulp stories in caricature. Dick Tracy, Buck Rogers, Tarzan, each engaged in conflict. The struggle between good and evil was the theme that dominated most comics. And occasionally, episodes were so lurid and violent that some newspapers would not print them. Today, there are still vestiges of action comics and pulps, and newer magazines containing pornography and sadomasochism are flourishing. But the communications revolution brought changes. Moving violence from the printed page to the silver screen was just a matter of technology. It all came to life at the movies.
Violence has always been popular with moviegoers. The earliest silent films showed executions, hangings, floggings, and similar events of public interest.
Made by Thomas Edison, shows the actual electrocution of an unruly carnival elephant. The Great Train Robbery, produced in 1903, was one of the first movies to tell a story. It was a violent Western.
Dirty double-crossing.
By the 1930s, you could hear the action as well as see it. The gangster film in sound was an instant success. Villains had fast cars, loud guns, loose women.
You don't give, you take. That would tell me I could love you to death.
Hollywood created a glamorous fantasy world filled with sex and violence.
What's the matter, Mama?
We want to get out of here. We want to get out of here.
Some people believed Hollywood was getting too explicit and too violent.
If you want me, you'll have to come and get me.
The industry code warned that murder must not be presented in a way that will inspire imitation, and brutal killings are not to be presented in detail. But box office demand prevailed. By the mid-1940s, some 70 million people were going to the movies each week. Most melodramas they saw presented a dark world of violence, terror, and death.
Man against crime.
What Hollywood had created for the movie theater, television adapted and moved into the home.
The news under the blanket.
In 1950, television reached 70 million people.
Kill him! Get him! Kill him before he sends us to the chair!
Hollywood's response? Offer the moviegoer something he could not get at home. Something bigger, more exciting. Sex and violence were part of the lure. Throughout the 60s, the competition between television and the movies grew. In 1967, a film called Bonnie and Clyde defied taboos. Guns and death in terrifying detail were served up in the name of art. Explicit violence had become an acceptable device for serious and exploitation films alike. Today, there is no question that we are accepting higher levels of violence in our movies. Americans have spent close to $200 million to see just 2 films, Jaws and The Godfather, the biggest moneymakers in film history. Armed with proof that people will buy violence, movies explore newer, bloodier ways to sell it. How far can you go? How many ways can you hurt a person? In The Omen, one of the most successful films of 1976, a man is decapitated. In The Godfather, a horse was decapitated. In Chinatown, Roman Polanski slashed Jack Nicholson's nose. In Missouri Breaks, Jack Nicholson slashed Marlon Brando's throat. Robert Mitchum sliced off his own finger in The Yakuza. Robert De Niro shot off another man's fingers in Taxi Driver. And Dustin Hoffman's bridge work fell victim to Sir Laurence Olivier's wrath in Marathon Man. There will always be a question as to what is artistic, innovative, or creative, and what is pure exploitation. Major studio films with serious intentions make explicit violence and sex appear legitimate.
The Great Texas Dynamite Chase!
Exploitation films take over from there.
Cannonball. Savage.
TNT Jackson. We make films for the mass public. We try to appeal emotionally to the public and to a lesser extent on an intellectual basis. Generally, there'll be a fair amount of action which can be classified as violence, if you will, within those films.
Roger Corman has been making low-budget exploitation films for 20 years. They're relatively cheap to produce and usually make a solid profit. What
we're doing now is shooting test scenes for Death Sport 2020, which is a follow-up picture to a picture we did called Death Race 2000. The catchline on Death Race 2000 was, in the year 2000, hit-and-run driving will no longer be a felony, it'll be the national sport. The catchline for Death Sport is, in the year 2020, the death penalty will be abolished, but there will be death sport. Now, that will tell you a certain extent how much violence we have in it. There's a great deal of violence in both pictures.
Here it comes!
Death Race and Death Sport could qualify as satire.
Frankenstein scores!
Both films comment on the values we place on sport and on winning, and on the importance of pop violence in our entertainment.
What about the race?
The race is abolished.
Abolished?
That's right.
President Frankenstein, you can't call off the race. The American people won't stand for it.
Get out of the way, Junior.
The race is the symbol of everything we hold dear, our American way of life. Sure, it's violent, but that's the way we love it. Violent, violent, violent. And that's why we love you.
Frank, do we have to listen to this?
Be violent.
No.
Put the volley to me.
public responds to action or violence in films. Violence has been part of our culture since before the dawn of civilization. So we are giving the public something we believe the public wants, and the fact that they come to see it indicates that they do want it.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, an example of the extreme violence currently fashionable and acceptable. It is a gruesome horror story, designed to shock and to make money. It did both.
We started off with a 2x4 to the side of the head to get their attention, and then went on and did it.
Stop!
It was not a film that attempted to justify itself. I feel that in the future, film should and will to please the audience, to get the people out of their homes and to the theaters, give them something they can't see on television, and deliver some amount of fantastics.
Whatever those fantastics may be, personal taste and tolerance will determine whether or not they're accepted. While the debate over the importance of violence in our movies continues, box office grosses prove violence and death sell tickets, millions of them. Violence in one form or another has always been out there in the dark, make-believe world of the theater, and it's reasonable to expect it always will.
The movies offer intense, lurid, and graphic examples of violence. Television violence is less intense, lurid, and graphic, but there is more of it, and television reaches more people than any other medium in history. 96% of all homes in this country have at least one television set. That set is on for an average of 6 hours a day. Adults spend approximately 28% of all their leisure time watching television. The average child under school age spends at least 20% of his hours awake in front of the television set. By the age of 18, that child will have spent 1/6 of his life watching television. 18,000 hours before the set, 12,000 hours in school.
Television is the greatest single source of experience for most Americans because it includes almost everyone. There is no other single experience that would be in common among so many different types and different groups of people. It's the first truly cradle-to-grave medium. It doesn't require literacy. You don't have to read. It doesn't require mobility. You don't have to move out of the house. It comes to you, and to the new generation, it comes right in the cradle.
More than 10 years ago, when Senator Kefauver presided over these hearings...
The connection between televised violence and behavior, particularly aggressiveness in children, has been debated in the Congress and by the public since the mid-1950s. In 1972, the results of an intensive government study were released in a report to the Surgeon General. The cautious conclusion has been accepted by most researchers in the field.
An examination of all the research provides some evidence of a causal relationship between TV violence and later aggressive behavior on the part of children.
You guys are either the worst shots in the world, or you need your eyes examined.
The report indicates that aggressive behavior cannot be defined simply or measured precisely, and that children are not affected uniformly. And we cannot say that children who are aggressive inevitably become adults who are violent. Still, the report dramatized the possibility of important connections between television viewing and children's behavior. If children can learn negative things from television, can't they learn positive things as well? That is only one of the areas researchers are exploring.
Really, what does the very young child get from watching television? Children who see as much television as they do have some difficulty in making a distinction between reality and what they see on television. The vicarious experiences that children have by watching television now provide them with experiences that never before were available to children.
In an earlier and simpler time, children learned from the family, the school, the community. Today, a great many children get their view of society from television. Television teaches them about success and failure, power and authority, right and wrong. It demonstrates ways of solving problems and reaching goals. It does all of that through adult programs and children's programs alike. Children's programming traditionally has been confined to Saturday morning. Until recently, the programs were mainly cartoons, violent, excessively so. In response to public pressure, cartoons themselves, still the mainstay, have changed somewhat.
Mom and Dad are gone, Nick and Muggsy left alone, time for moving on.
And adventure programs, comedy programs, educational cartoons, and specials are now included in network schedules.
Together, keeping it together. Together.
Here comes the Pink Panther, pull up a chair, prepare for...
Some people believe that these changes are not enough. Children's programs do not make up most of what most children watch. There are always some children viewing television, and there are a great many children viewing in the early evening. So, in September 1975, the broadcast industry announced a formal family viewing time. The hours between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. were reserved for programs planned for a general family audience, including children. In November 1976, a federal judge in California ruled that the method by which family viewing time was created was unconstitutional. He did not find unconstitutional family viewing time itself. His ruling is being appealed. Meanwhile, family viewing time continues. There are people who feel that the family viewing idea is only a partial solution. A number of stations are refusing to broadcast network films that they consider offensive or excessively violent. The American Medical Association is encouraging a boycott of violent television programs and of the companies sponsoring them. In September, the National Parent Teachers Association announced a year-long campaign against television violence and called for a truer, broader picture of American life. The PTA is holding public forums and, like the AMA, is encouraging a boycott. One advertiser, General Foods, has led the way in stopping sponsorship of programs that exploit violence and sex. General Foods is encouraging other companies to take the same position. J. Walter Thompson, the largest advertising agency in the world, is also advocating change.
And when so much of television programming leads to the exploitation of higher and higher levels of violence, that's got to mean trouble. The more we probe the issue, the more we are convinced that sponsorship of television violence is potentially bad business as well as a social risk.
Kelly!
These attitudes reflect the feeling that violence on television can be toned down, although nobody expects it to go away. Social psychologist George Comstock.
Americans have an appetite, at least for a particular kind of violence and entertainment. Perhaps primarily because of the pioneer and Western tradition on which much of American entertainment draws. And it's set a kind of tone and style around which other media have developed.
Some of the research that's been done recently suggests that watching a great deal of violence on television may in fact desensitize people to real-life violence. Some experiments have shown that watching a good bit of TV violence makes the individual less likely to be sympathetic to or responsive to circumstances in which either violence is shown or in which someone needs some help.
We have been studying the world of primetime and weekend daytime television drama now for the 10th year. The most significant finding of our studies is that violence is indeed a social relationship whose ultimate effect is to generate fear, to make people more accepting of authority, in many ways to ask for protection.
The studies differentiate between heavy viewers and light viewers. They found that heavy viewers, those who watch television for 4 or more hours a day, tend to overestimate the danger and violence around them. Of course, it may also be that people who are anxious and fearful tend to watch a great deal of television as an escape. Nonetheless, the predominance of television in their lives affects their view of the world and offsets other cultural influences.
In many ways, the world of television revolves around the question of law and order. About 1/3 of all the occupations in the world of television are concerned with either committing crime and violence or with its suppression.
Police, free! Don't do it.
On the police shows, almost invariably the cop gets his man.
Got him.
Almost invariably there is a great deal of action, of a kind that rarely takes place in real life.
Policemen can go days and weeks and months without being personally involved with physical violence.
Why'd you blow into my hand? Had something to drink to see if you damage it.
Cops can go their entire careers without shooting, without firing their gun in combat. But it's very difficult for a policeman to go very long without being overwhelmed with the emotional traumas of his job. I think that violence, real violence, differs totally from television action. Implicit in television action is nothing. After the action scene is over, that's it. Implicit in real violence is wound to the spirit and the mind as well as the body.
Joseph Wambaugh served on the Los Angeles police force for 14 years. Now he is a writer and an advisor on Police Story, a program he created. It is an action series based on the experiences of Los Angeles police officers and strives for a degree of reality about cops and the way they live.
Get in position roughly where that yellow car is. You see the yellow car?
But there are problems. Reality is often uninteresting and undramatic. It may not engage the viewer. It may not sell. Drama demands pace and texture and conflict. Conflict on nighttime television means action.
People like action, and under action comes the umbrella of violence or whatever. There's no question they want to be entertained. They want to be enthralled. They want to share vicarious thrills of fear and jeopardy, and maybe even hurt within themselves. And they like the big scope.
The industry is convinced, and they can prove it by statistics, that the American people want this violence they call action. We never use the word violence in this industry. It's always action. When we have a good story, a good quality police story, and yet there's no action in Act 2. And God help us, there's no action in Act 4. And so what are we going to do to insert action in this story to satisfy the brass? And the brass, once again, to give them their due, are trying to satisfy the sponsors and the buyers of the sponsor's product. And yet it's to be sanitized action which doesn't offend them. Therefore, you can shoot 30 or 40 people and have bodies dropping off buildings and people being slugged, kicked, poisoned, raped, war, and pillage but don't have any blood or anything offensive like that, or any gore, you see. So clean up your violence, and then we'll call it action, and we'll get everybody excited, and everybody will watch our show. I say that's pandering to violence.
It's entirely possible that sanitized violence is more dangerous than portraying violence. Realistically, sanitized violence has the effect of portraying the means of doing harm without demonstrating to potential perpetrators the distasteful, the undesirable consequences of their acts.
When violence must be shown, I believe it should be shown realistically. Violence, in my experience, was always fast, and it was always ugly, and it was always chaotic. Let's show the folks who are, on the one hand, writing angry letters to their politicians and to the network and to the studios about violence, and on the other hand, are tuning in these shows by the millions, what violence really looks like. And it's not going to look like anything that they've seen on television, and it's going to offend the hell out of them.
We live in a violent world. Every night, all of us come home to killings on the news, killings in various areas of the Middle East, in Bangladesh. Those are violent. Scenes that we see day in and day out. And we live in a world where we really can't eradicate those things. They're there, they're facts of life. And if the do-gooders, if you will, want to hem those of us that produce programs in to subjects that are totally nonviolent, I think they're absolutely unrealistic.
The major problem is what we tend to call gratuitous violence. That is, violence which is presented primarily for the sake of inciting the viewer, holding the viewer, increasing the action level, and not in any real sense adding to the storyline.
All of us in television have a good sense of responsibility of providing entertainment for the mass public that is what they want to see. We can't tell the public what to do. They're going to tell us what they want us to do.
Just as there is an audience for half-hour comedy broadcasts, I think there's a large audience for the action-adventure which leads one to violence. I do honestly believe that it's there. I don't necessarily say that the three networks have to pander to those tastes. I think that we have to provide a certain amount of broadcasts where there's conflict. Conflict will lead normally to violence.
A lot of the television programs show violence for what it is, something that's not very good. Our report card comes in almost every day on how successful programs are. And I would say that the taste of the mass of people that we serve and entertain each night, that there will be less police programs in the future.
You cannot have programming, dramatic programming, or adventure-type programming without having conflict. And if conflict brings violence, then that's a way of life. I think the real key is on how it's handled, on how we produce it and how we execute it, not the fact that there is conflict there itself.
It has not been proved that violence on television and in the movies provokes violent behavior, and it may be that there is no way to prove it. Still, people do believe it. In the NBC News poll, when people were asked whether violence on television and in the movies encourages real violence, 70% of those responding said yes. When asked whether there was too much violence on television, 72% said yes, there was too much. This has its ironies. According to the poll, most people believe that violence on television and in the movies is dangerous. Yet, by what is in effect a poll done every night, television ratings and movie box offices prove the popularity of violence, the appetite for it. Where does all of this lead us? Let's go back a bit. There is violence in the Bible, Shakespeare, opera, fairy tales. 100 years ago, the rich and idle rode out from Washington to watch the slaughter at Bull Run. There were public executions in this country as recently as 1936. Lynchings used to draw not only lynchers, but spectators. And today we have dogfights and cockfights. Not legally, but we have them. So there is nothing new about violence as entertainment. What is new now is the technology. You can walk around the corner and enjoy violence in the movie theater. And if that's too much trouble, you can sit back and watch it comfortably at home. There is more violence, and it has become a daily part of our lives and a big and profitable business. You buy the tickets, read the books, see the movies, turn the dials. You're the ones who are paying for it. We began this program with children. Now we have come back to them, and that's as it should be. Troubled children too often become troubled adults, and in this country there are thousands and thousands of such children. We don't know how many, but certainly with time and patience and imagination and the resources, some of these can be saved, even the lonely and the baffled and the violent among them. Even, perhaps, a boy named Benji.
Benji is 14 years old. His mother is ill and on welfare. He barely remembers his father. Benji has been in and out of reform schools all his life. We found him at the Tri-Center in Miami, the Florida State Program for Boys in Trouble. It's an unusual place. No cells, no locked doors, and at night the boys return to their homes. Benji was at the Tri-Center on a stolen property charge. The other boys, like Benji, began getting into trouble when they were very young. Skipping school, shoplifting, petty vandalism. A lot of them went on to bigger things. Aggravated assault, armed robbery, and murder. Not Benji. Not yet. Benji was hard to catch hold of. The counselors could not be sure which was the real Benji and which was Benji acting out a role. When was he telling the truth, at least as he saw it, and when was he merely trying to impress an audience? We don't know. And if he was playing a role, why did he choose this one? And how far will he carry it?
After I went to see the movie, I just seen how it was, you know, and how the gangsters got away with everything, and at the end they got shot and everything. So that's what got me really mad when he got shot. So it was just a movie, but it was really in real life. Then I started stealing and holding up people and, you know, ripping everybody off, you know. I couldn't start it with somebody about older than me, like 17. I knew I wouldn't have the chance of whipping their ass. So I started off with weak things, like an old person and a little kid, whatever. And then I got hooked on it. We just went around picking on everybody, you know. Magnum Force, I seen what this pimp did to his lady. He put Drano down her throat. So I said, well, let me try this. And I almost done it, but she was too wild.
Have you ever been a pimp?
I took over for somebody for a little while.
How did you like that? How did you like that?
I enjoyed it.
If you could have it your way, what would you be doing now?
Be getting high.
Be getting high?
Yeah.
On pot, I imagine, right?
Mm-hmm. You know, I don't see nothing wrong with getting high. Because now most of the kids get high in this world. Oh, sometimes we get so stoned out that we don't know where we're at and what we're doing, you know? We just go anywhere, start fights and anything. The kind of drugs that we done like that was orange sunshine acid. And mushroom juice does the same thing to you. You know, everything seems to you different. Well, the first time I used a gun, I was all stoned out. I was on purple microdot.
purple microdot is a drug that leads to hallucinations. It's an upper, the stuff of dreams. Miami Beach is separated from the tri-center world only by a narrow waterway. It might as well be an ocean. Too many of the boys feel that they could never make it across. It's more logical for them to become pimps or pushers or superflies. It never enters their minds to become doctors or lawyers or scientists.
I think most of them feel that those things are unobtainable. I think if they were put in a position where they were obtainable, then those kids would respect the law and would end up being decent citizens. They are defeatists by the time we see them, and it's our job to turn that around.
Lenny Perlman and the other counselors, dedicated men, have one basic message. You don't have to prove yourself by taking drugs or robbing or killing. The Tri-Center tries to show the boys that there is another world, one they could share in. A world that considers the value of living instead of the price tag on death.
There are guys in the street that will kill you over a dime. No. I mean, they'll fuss over a dime, you know. Well, I don't mean that literally. I mean, you know.
Not over a dime, but
a quarter or, you know.
Not over a quarter, but $5 or $2 or $3. You
Would anybody here, truthfully now, would anybody here kill somebody for money?
All depends on how much it is.
Yeah, me too. And you wouldn't feel bad about it?
No. Because of money. It was worth it to me.
Yeah, you'd be happy.
You know what I mean?
Spend the money, huh?
No, it'd be a lot of money where, you know, I'll be happy for a very long time.
How about you, Benny? Would you kill somebody for enough money?
For enough money?
Really? If it was enough money, what would you call enough money?
Like 50,000. I'd do anything to get it.
I really can't believe Benny would shoot anybody.
You don't think I got the nerves? Give me a gun, bring me a gun, then jump on my case and I will shoot you. If they don't believe me, I can prove it to them. I'll go out and shoot somebody. Blow his brains away.
Benny Fisher is potentially dangerous because he is impressionable. And he's dangerous in the sense that I think he has no self-esteem. Once somebody challenges that, and I think he's willing to do anything to retain that self-esteem.
Benji had been a loner all his life. He was tied to no one. He trusted no one. For months, the counselors tried to get through to him. They couldn't. He remained cool, sometimes frivolous, hanging tough.
Did you ever do any armed robberies?
I refuse to answer that.
Well, okay, you can refuse, but, you know, just to continue our conversation, I'd like to ask you, is there anything that you would like to contribute, you know, regarding your using guns for any type of illegal activity?
Mm-hmm.
Have you?
Yeah. You know, I never used to worry about nothing. As long as I had a gun on me, I just wasn't scared of nothing.
Better yet, have you ever been in a situation when you possibly may have had to kill someone?
Yeah.
You have? How were you able to deal with this?
As long as the right person got shot.
The right person? Who would the right person be?
Not me.
Would you feel bad about killing someone?
I don't feel nothing about it.
You don't feel nothing about it?
Okay.
How would you feel that person would die as a result of you shooting them?
They died, they died.
Listen, Benji, do you think that you would still be living until you're 21?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I know I will.
In fact, you know you will. So what you're saying is that you'll be able to survive until you're 21 and older, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't, would you care?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know when I'm going to get shot, killed. I don't know what.
Sometimes you feel threatened?
Yeah.
You ever have the feeling that you might get bumped off sometime?
Yeah.
I think he is, in a way, a tragic case. I don't know if he's capable now of giving or receiving love. Now, unless we can show him another way of obtaining self-esteem, I don't think we're going to succeed with him. I think he's probably going to either end up in prison or maybe dead.
For Benji, the Tri-Center experiment failed. He got worse, and finally he ran away. He was caught and transferred out. No longer able to live in the community, his freedom gone. We think of counseling Benji, of telling him things. But turn it around. What can the existence of a boy like Benji tell us? He devotes his talents, will, and energy not to what is good, but to what is bad. Why does Benji do that? And why are there so many Benjis? If we don't want a violent society, we'd better find out.
This program has been on the air for 3 hours. In that time, if it was an average 3 hours, the country had at least 7 murders, 20 reported rapes, 166 aggravated assaults, 159 robberies, 342 cases of child abuse and neglect, and so on and so on, and on and on. Now, this is part of the meaning of violence in America, only a part, signs of the times. Looking for explanations, it's tempting to say that man is naturally violent and to let it go at that. But it's more complicated. It's clear that the family breeds violence for some people. So does poverty, so do racial feelings. And what about the condition of the cities and what we read and see and the emphasis we place on competition and success? Maybe all of these, plus the influence of the frontier and the way we developed as a nation, make us violent. The question facing us is whether we accept this as the natural and inescapable order of things. Now, obviously, there are limits to what a free society can do in the way of limiting violence or anything else undesirable and remain a free society. Police states do have less of the kinds of violence that we have, but their violence is in the service of the state. It is the state. Nonetheless, within the limits we impose on ourselves, there are solutions that can be suggested, things that can be done. 30 minutes from now, we will return to speak to a number of people, specialists in their fields, who have been watching this program. In the meantime, as you watch your local news, you may well see more evidence of what we've been talking about. We'll be back in half an hour.
Walt Baby Love's favorite song, I Wonder Why. 12:30 with Joe McCoy at 66 NBC.
When you were young and your heart was an open book, you used to say, live and let live. You know you did, you know you did, you know you did. But if this ever-changing world in which we're living makes you give in and cry, say live and let die. Live and let die. Live and let used to say, live and let live. But if this ever-changing world in which we live in